Graham is one of the highest profile advocates for people with disability in Australia, and since 2005 he has been Australia's Disability Discrimination Commissioner, in which he has led and contributed to the success of a number of initiatives, including the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the National Disability Strategy, the Disability Access to Premises Standards 2010, and of course the 20 Years, 20 Stories project. He's a member of the Order of Australia and was a finalist for Australia of the Year in 2003. So I'd like you all to put your hands together and welcome Graham.
Thank you. Dropped your pen. Thanks very much for that introduction, Deb, and for your all of your welcome. And I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. Now, also, I think you should fill in your evaluations if you want to while I'm speaking. I'm sure all of you can multitask, and anyway, I won't know you're doing it. 7-year-old Duncan's parents are worried. He's about to be suspended from school. Duncan and his family live just outside a Victorian regional town, and he catches the bus to school each day. So he gets the seat right behind the driver, and he returns on the bus at the end of the school day. He's doing all right at school, and he's getting on with friends. But the school says he's been violent towards other children on the bus in the afternoons. Now Duncan, and of course that's not his real name, has autism. The school principal is supportive of Duncan's attendance, but the school has a strong anti-violence policy with which she must comply, and she can only conclude that the school day is too tiring for Duncan. Mum and Dad both work, so can't pick up Duncan, and Grandma, who minds him in the afternoons, doesn't drive. Parents and teachers have talked to Duncan about the problem, but the reports of hitting and pinching keep coming. Suspension seems the only option. Duncan's mum has read about the Convention on the Rights of People with Disability, the Victorian Charter of Human Rights, and state and federal disability discrimination legislation. And she knows how much Duncan loves school and wants to do everything that she can. And as a last resort, she talks to a disability rights advocate. The advocate contacts the principal and explains Duncan's rights to education and the need for the school to provide reasonable adjustment for Duncan. And the principal agrees that the advocate can observe Duncan for a day at school before she imposes the suspension. The advocate sees that Duncan is happy on the way to school and during school. The problem only occurs on the way home, when all of the kids rush onto the bus and Duncan can't sit in the front seat. So with a small adjustment to routine to let Duncan get on the bus first and sit in the front seat, his education resumes. Now, why have I told you this story? Because we need to ensure that our society caters for everyone, not just for people without disability, people who fit a particular mould. And thanks, Martin, we need to change this mindset. And that's much of what Disability Care Australia is all about. I was recently described by the CEO of a particular disability agency as a grumpy old bugger. Now that was after I'd spent some time with him explaining how his organisation would need to change as a result of reform in the disability sector. I think he was a bit challenged by my advocacy. But in criticising me, he was really shooting the messenger, because we're certainly very much in a time of change. I've been around the disability advocacy space in Australia for more than 30 years, and I've been around Commonwealth government not much less time. I know the two spaces in which DCA, Disability Care Australia, has been created pretty well. So what do you think might be the word I would use if asked about the creation of Disability Care Australia? Without a doubt, the word is amazing. It provides the opportunity for control and the opportunity for choice. Now, I've called my speech today getting to Gracelands. Now, you all saw Dee's Place yesterday, didn't you? Did you like the movie? Yeah, it's fantastic. Dee came to the launch of the movies in Sydney earlier this year, and I was trying to catch up with all the people who'd had films made about them, and so I was trying to meet them all, and so Dee came over to meet me, and someone said, you know, this is Dee, and we were introduced, might have been Deb. And I said, oh, Dee, great to meet you. And she said, yeah, why didn't you show my film at the launch? I only had time to show 3 or 4 out of the 20, but I tell you what, Dee, I've shown it a lot ever since. But what a great story. And it was her aim to get to Gracelands. I sat this morning, you know, thinking about Essie's team, and that was another great story. And it started me thinking about my team. My wife, my daughter, my broader family, my niece who goes to the cricket with me, my mates who I sail with, my work colleagues, people in the disability sector. And I thought about my wife's team, me, her family, her church, and people in her business. And my daughter Rachel has a team. Her mum, my wife, myself, her brother, her cousins, and her friends. We all have teams. It's how we operate as human beings. And many of those teams are for people with disability, like some of you and like me. And many of them are not. And many of those teams contain people with disability as their members. Now, if you're the captain or the leader of a team, you lead it and you make the rules and you make the decisions. You might get help to make the rules and lead the team, but that's what you do. And the theory behind Disability Care Australia has 2 parts. More services, so more choice of services, but also control of which services you have. So choice and control. So the movie Dee's Place is about her team, her mum and dad, who couldn't work out what the heck was going to happen when she told them all the places she didn't want to live. The person who shares her flat, the people with whom she works, the members of her community, and her support workers. And it shows her in that team, leading that team, making the decisions, setting the direction, and ends with the direction she wants to take to Gracelands. And I thought about my work, which relates a lot to discrimination and to advocating for inclusion for people with disability. Inclusion in where we live, where we work, where we play, where we enjoy our leisure, and where we do what we do. So I want to show you a couple of more films today from the 20 Years, 20 Stories project. And I'm sure you've all found the bookmarks in your pack, but if you haven't, make sure you don't lose that bookmark, because that tells you the website address, and I want you to watch all 20 of those films. I don't just want you to watch them, I want you to share them on Facebook and Twitter, because these are important messages that we need to get out to our networks, to the members of our cyber teams. So here's the first one about Stella and Mads. And just like Essie, they love fashion, but they couldn't easily get it, so they did something about it. Let's watch that Room for Change movie now.
I think there's an underlying assumption that, you know, people who use wheelchairs, of course, wouldn't be interested in fashion, which is absolutely not true.
I really like to look my best, and just because I have a disability doesn't mean it should be any different.
Well, this place actually used to be a bookshop, and when it was a bookshop, it was over 2 levels, both of which were independently accessible. So you could access one level from inside the jam factory and one level from the street. But when it became a top shop, which I was really excited about because the UK brands that we haven't had access to here, they renovated it to put it over 3 levels. The middle level was not independently accessible at all, so it completely ruined the access of the whole shop. They had this little lift between those 3 levels, and the manager said, well, there's a key somewhere for that lift. Not quite sure where it is, but let me go and check. He came back with this enormous ring of keys and kept trying them all. Not not able to find the key for these lifts. So it was completely useless having them if people can't actually use them, if no one knows where this key is. And everybody was very nice. The store manager offered to lift my chair, and I said, I doubt you get paid enough in fashion retail to break your back lifting me into a shop. And I really like clothes, but no outfit yet has been worth my dignity and being carried into a store. So I left a very unsatisfied customer.
I was shopping for a dress to wear for a friend's birthday party, and I wanted to try on a dress, but I couldn't access the fitting rooms. The ideal thing is for me to be able to purchase clothing and take it home and try it on and take it back in a couple of days if I don't like it or if it doesn't fit. I asked if I could take the clothes home. The sales assistant just didn't get it and just kept saying no, flat out no. I felt quite annoyed, and I made a complaint to the Australian Human Rights Commission, and I wanted to use the legislation to get something done about it.
I actually decided that the best way to tackle this was actually through Twitter. There's nothing like some bad press to get people to act. So I tweeted that I found it very disappointing that Topshop couldn't provide access. And they saw my tweet and got straight back to me and said, can we please have your email address? We'd like to talk to you about what happened. So I emailed them some details of what had taken place, but I found it very disappointing that not only had they renovated the shop to make it so that it was not independently accessible, but no one actually knew how to use the assisted access that was in place.
The Human Rights Commission contacted me and wrote a letter to the owners of the shop and said that they that I had put a complaint in and they had to do something about it, basically.
We try to have one big fitting room in all of our Global House stores. If for some reason that is not big enough, we have the policy where you can try clothes on at home and then bring them back if they don't fit for a full cash refund. So that's a simple way of going about a problem that can be avoided.
So if you have any problems with these at all, just bring them straight back.
There's no need to feel fuss about it. You can just purchase the clothes. If they don't fit, you can just bring them straight back.
See you later.
Within a week, I got an email back from them to say that they'd not only changed the settings on the lifts so that you no longer needed a key to operate them, but all of the staff in their store had been given disability awareness training, and they sent me a $100 gift voucher so I could go back and have a much more accessible clothes purchasing experience. I think they handled that situation very well, and I think it's a good outcome for all concerned, and I'll buy their clothes for many years to come because accessible fashion is always good.
In the end, they wrote a letter back to me through the Human Rights Commission saying that they're very sorry that I was inconvenienced and that they would allow people with disabilities to buy clothing from their store and take it back within 2 days.
Look, I think social media is a fantastic tool for social change, and whether it's, tweeting your dissatisfaction about a product or a service or a company, it's public, everyone can see it. I think as soon as people hear the words disability discrimination, they get quite nervous. Not only is it really uncool, but there are legal ramifications for discriminating against people with disabilities. And I think that it's really important that while we can use social media, we do have legislation that can back us up as well.
So this story talks about difference, that we all have different needs, and that if everyone is going to be able to shop themselves, then we need to take account of that difference by a change room which is accessible, by letting people take clothes home to try them, etc. Much about the talk Much of the talk about getting DCA, Disability Care Australia, has been about the money that will be needed. And that's because the disability sector and people with disability have been significantly under-resourced in terms of the services that we receive. Now, I don't need to tell you the statistics on that. You live it. We need to change that, and that will cost more. So more money has to be found. But Disability Care Australia is not about money, and it's not about the system and the rules that are needed to run it. Of course, those things are important, but they're not the key principles. The key principles are choice and control. And for many people with disability, having the supports around us, our teams, to assist us make those decisions, where we'll live, where we'll work, what we'll do, and how we'll get to Gracelands. So planners and local area coordinators at Disability Care Australia and at the organisations which contract with Disability Care Australia to carry out that work will be part of those teams. But so will mums and dads, family members, friends, microboards, whoever is on the person's team. Now, sometimes people get in the way of our teams, of what we want to do. Just like in the AFL, people get in the way of our teams. People on the other team get in the way of our teams. Now, I used to live in Western Australia, so I support the Eagles. Does anyone else here support the Eagles? Oh, one. Oh, excellent. Okay, who here supports Collingwood? Right. And who supports anyone but Collingwood? Yeah, the rest of you, that's right. Most of Melbourne is a member of the ABC, aren't you? Anyone but Collingwood? But anyway, so this next story is about Seku and his team. His mum, his interpreters, his coach, and his keenness to win. So let's have a look at Seku's story.
Seku Kana sprints the 100 metres in under 12 seconds. He's beating everyone in his age group.
I'm 12 years old and I come from Liberia in Africa. This is my mum. My mum is always telling me not to comb my hair. This is my school. I feel fully included because it's a bilingual school. They use sign language and English.
You're not sore?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, he's got a lot of skill. He always shocks me. It's like I've always got a few doubts about him, but every year he manages to surprise me. He's constantly improving. 1 second every year.
He's got the talent, he's got the discipline, but how can you hope to be the best when you can't hear the starter's gun?
Everyone's trying to get the best time. I want to try and beat other people and break my personal record. Every second really counts.
He takes his cue from the others on the start line. What he needs is a flashing light.
What I did was I looked at the people on either side of me and watched their legs, and when they took off, I'd take off after them, but I'd have to look at them to know what to do. I think it's not been very fair to me because I can't hear the starter's pistol. It's very hard for me in races. It's a bit of a disadvantage. Well, I want to be involved. I want everything to be the same, and they said no. I felt really sad and lonely and down.
He's not asking for anything special, anything different or anything better than anyone else. All he's asking for is to be advised or told when the race starts so that he can have an equal shot at winning.
We kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and everyone kept saying no, but I was very stubborn. I wanted the flashing light.
Seku lodged a complaint with the Human Rights Commission.
His message is clear. Why should I be treated any differently because I can't hear the gun go bang at the start of a race.
And now I won, and they said, yes, we can have a flashing light so I can compete in the races like everybody else.
Any athlete needing a flashing starter light can now ask for one. Siku's complaint was quickly resolved through the Human Rights Commission conciliation process. It was positive and quick, exactly like Siku.
Fortunate that sometimes we have to complain to get people to change attitudes and change mindsets, but we have a law to help us to do that. Sadly, my wife and I, Maureen, came back from Perth to the eastern states about a month ago following Maureen's mum's funeral. So this has been a very tough month for Maureen and a hard one for me as well. But let me tell you of two incidents which occurred while we were in Perth and on our way home. Firstly, at the funeral, the priest assumed that I, a person who couldn't see but whose legs still worked tolerably well, and who had walked into the church, he assumed that I couldn't get from the front seat of the church to the altar rail to take communion. So, without asking me, he offered me communion at my seat. But he didn't speak, so I had no idea what was going on. And when, as a result, I didn't put my hand out to take the wafer, he tried to push it into my mouth. I didn't spit it out. Second, we brought Maureen's mum's wheelchair back from Perth with us to Sydney so that my mum could use it. And we walked into the airport together, Maureen wheeling the wheelchair and me wheeling our luggage, because the wheelchair folded up, so we were just going to take it as luggage. And the airline staff immediately assumed that the wheelchair was for me, a man who couldn't see, but who had walked into the terminal and who was standing in front of them. Now, these were two minor incidents, right? They didn't bother me very much. But these sorts of incidents happen every day to those of us in Australia who have a disability. All of you here with a disability could tell us similar stories. And if you can't think of them, I can assure you it's not because they haven't happened, it's because they happen so often that you don't even notice. Elizabeth Hastings, the first Disability Discrimination Commissioner, used to say that people with a disability swim in a sea of discrimination. Now, I'm sure that the people who treated me in these ways did so with the best of intentions. But in doing so, they disempowered me, they took away my decision-making, they dealt with my disability first and with me second, and they acted in a way which was completely inappropriate. But you know what? I don't blame them individually, because they behaved just the way that our society teaches them to behave. They demonstrated a negative, limiting attitude towards people with disability. And whilst Disability Care Australia is a great achievement, it won't change those societal attitudes to people with disability. I'm firmly of the view that our obligations, all of us here today, and all of us in the team which is gathered around people with disability and Disability Care Australia, is to knock down that attitude barrier. Because until that occurs, people with disability will not be equals and will not be included in Australian society. And Duncan won't be on that bus. So, how do we do it? Well, we don't do it with slick marketing campaigns. We don't do it by hiding people with disability away in special schools or in segregated workplaces. We don't do it by using our prison systems as alternate accommodation options for people with intellectual or cognitive disability and people with mental illness. We do equality and inclusion by actually doing it. And that's what you've been talking about for the last 2 days. What could be? What a fantastic society we could have if we included everyone. We have now got Disability Care Australia, so the support will be there for people with disability and our families. We have disability discrimination legislation, so if people believe that they're discriminated against, they can complain. We have a more united and empowered disability sector. And we have people like you and I, People who are prepared to dream and vision, and then prepared to put in the hard work to make those dreams reality. Getting Duncan on the bus and staying in school, filling in Essie's jigsaw, getting Daniel's job and Daniel's house, improving their lives and the lives of all of us in the community, getting Dee to Gracelands. Thanks very much for the chance to speak with you this afternoon.